Hey, what's up YouTube? This is Dan the Fix-It Man. Got another quick video here for you. I'm going to show you how to change your front brake pads and your front calipers on a 1996 Infiniti I30. And if you've seen some of my other brake videos, you'll know that the method that I choose to push the piston back in, at least just so that we can get this off. We don't have to push it in all the way since we are replacing it, but I'll put a screwdriver in here and just pry enough so that you can loosen the caliper or push the piston back in through the caliper. This one's leaked quite a bit, and that's the reason for changing it. But now that that's pushed in, we can remove these caliper bolts, and those are 14 millimeter. Now before I take these out, I'm going to also break loose the bolt that holds the brake line to the caliper. It's a little bit easier to do with the calipers still mounted, and that will be a 12 millimeter, and that's just over here. And you just want to loosen that enough so that it's broken free, so that we can now take out the caliper bolts. And that's what those look like. We'll set those aside. And you can see these brake pads have these little springs that go in these little holes in the end of the brake pad, and that pushes your pads outward so that they're not always rubbing. But we are reusing those, so we'll set those aside, and we can pull the old pads out as well. Before taking off this brake line here, I like to have the new caliper ready so that you're not going to drip that brake fluid for too long. Also, it comes with this little washer that will go right there as well. So I'm just going to take this line out and just transfer it over to the new one so we don't drip too much fluid all over the place. And you can see there's the old washer. We'll take that off and put it into this new caliper right here. And we're losing some fluid here, so I'm going to try to tighten that down. Just tightening that down as quick as I can so we don't lose too much fluid or make too much of a mess. Of course, we still will need to bleed the air out of this caliper, but at least we're not dripping all over the place right now. Before I put the new pads in, I'm just going to clean this up a little bit with some brake cleaner. Get some of that fluid and junk off of the rotor. Now, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to turn the rotor too, since a little bit of fluid got on there, and so it's a little bit glazed up, fouled up, but we just don't have the time for that today, so we are going to put the pads back on. If you've seen some of my other videos, you'll also know that I like to use a little bit of this brake grease on the back of the pad and also at each end here. Nowhere where it will contact the rotor, but just in these little areas. That seems to cut down on the brake noise. And we'll just put that in right there. Same thing with the other pad, just a little coat of grease and a little bit at each end. And we'll put that right into that little retainer. Now the tricky part is with these springs here. So there's little holes down here in the end of the pad, and you just want to line those up and put them in like so, but you may need to use your hand to keep some pressure on the brakes and keep them together, or else you'll have a hard time getting that caliper back on. Now there we go. This one actually popped out. There we go. So those are in, the springs are in, and then we can bring our caliper back down over the pads. And these little slide pins with boots, sometimes you have to pull those towards you just to align that. That went on just fine. And then you can put these bolts back in. Now we also want to just make sure to torque down that brake line where it enters the caliper. And that's pretty much it. You do need to bleed the brakes. You can look that one up on YouTube. There's lots of examples on how to do that, but basically just fill the master cylinder and have someone pump up the brake pedal and then hold it and then release or loosen this bleeder valve enough to let the air out until you see only fluid coming through with no bubbles. And then you're done. I, of course, am not going to do the brake bleeding until I finish the other side. But once I do, we'll get it wrapped up, back on the road. Thanks so much for watching. Good luck.